Welcome to third year. If you're like I was, you're probably wondering what the hell to expect now that you're going into the hospital. Unfortunately, I feel like many medical schools don't really prep you a lot for what you're about to do. I think it's because there's a really huge variation between different hospitals and rotations, so everyone can end up having extremely different experiences. So instead, you're just kind of thrown in there and expected to learn on the job. So, I thought it would be a good idea to go over a brief overview of at least the very basics that should hold true no matter where you're doing your third year rotations. You will be rotating through each of the core rotations: internal medicine, surgery, OBGYN, psychiatry, family medicine, and pediatrics. The way that you end up being evaluated comes down to two things: your objective evaluations and subjective evaluations. Objective evaluations usually account for 20 to 50% of your grade, while subjective evaluations account for 50 to 80%. The components that make up your objective evaluation include NBME shelf exams at the end of your rotation, and in some rotations, OSCEs, which stands for Objective Structured Clinical Examination. Basically, you'll be interacting with standardized patients and completing required tasks in order to get a grade. For your subjective evaluations, these are determined through evaluations from your residents and attendings on the teams that you work with during your rotation. And this is really sort of the toughest part. For most of us during our education, determining success is largely objective with clear goals, and in third year you are thrown into a situation where you don't really know how the hospital works, but are expected to make a good subjective impression on everybody right from the start anyways. Oftentimes, the goals that you are supposed to achieve are really vague and nebulous, and can feel completely arbitrary based on how a particular person likes the way you look or speak, and sometimes are based on things entirely not under your control, like your gender or height. Several studies have actually shown biases in the med student evaluation process based on gender, for example. Now let's start talking about the team that you'll be working with, because I actually really clearly remember in the first couple of weeks having absolutely no idea who I was with and who was on my team, and it was something I seriously wish someone had just told me very quickly at the start. The team will consist of you, the MS3, possibly a fourth-year medical student, first-year residents, also known as interns, senior residents, and an attending. The fourth-year medical student may be doing their sub-internship or acting internship, which means they are likely going into that particular field and are going to be trying their hardest to do well on the rotation. The interns are brand new out of medical school, and in July, they're basically as inexperienced as medical students. Typically, they're quite understanding of how medical school was, because they just came out of it, and often will try to get you out early so you can go study for your shelf exams. But they're also super busy as they bear the brunt of the note writing and busy work on the team, so they might not be able to spend as much attention on you as they'd like, or as you'd like. Generally, I would say both the fourth year and interns are good people to ask if you feel like you have a basic question that you are worried might be perceived as quote-unquote unintelligent. Save your intelligent questions for the senior residents and attendings. Your major goal is really to impress the attending because their evaluation matters the most for you. And the main way that you do this is on rounds. So what are rounds? Basically, the hospital system works like this. The first day, you're probably going to come in a bit later in the morning because you had orientation or something. You'll meet with the senior resident who will give you a patient to start following. You'll read up on them in the chart, figure out why they're here in the hospital, what their problems are, and go meet them. The next morning, you will come in early to do pre-rounding. This is when you see your patients early in the morning to see if anything new happened overnight or if they have any new complaints. You will do a brief physical exam, write down their vitals and any new labs or imaging results, and then try to figure out what the plan for them during the day will be. The next step is rounding, and this step takes a generally significant part of the morning, usually 2 to 3 hours on average. This is when your whole team gets together, including the attending, and you walk around the hospital visiting each patient's room and presenting the patient to your attending. Now, this is the most important step in getting a good evaluation from your attending, because the way you present and the plan you suggest is the way that they will mainly base their evaluation of you and your medical knowledge. Other than this rounding time, you usually get pretty limited time with the attending, so it really is very important that you nail your presentations during rounds. After rounds, you will complete tasks necessary for your patients the rest of the day. The level of responsibility you have will vary depending on your institution and team, but often you may be finishing your note, calling to coordinate social work or figure out discharge plans, updating handoffs that will be given to the night team, etc. In some situations, you may be allowed to pen orders for your patients for your resident to sign, call consults, and even hold the pager and return calls to nurses to figure out what they need for your team's patients. This is really where you can shine to the residents on your team by helping them out on difficult and time-consuming tasks and being a good team player. That's it for this video. In my next video, I will give my general advice and do's and don'ts for getting honors evaluations on your rotations. Thanks for watching and see you then.